Welcome to the ThunderCast, your martial athletics podcast produced by the fans, for the fans, with your hosts, Russ Livingood and KD Hugnall. We're bringing you the thundering word on the thundering herd each and every week, so keep it right here. The ThunderCast is on the loose. Thanks for downloading another episode of the ThunderCast, and welcome to 2025 for crying out loud. Who would have thought? I mean, I know that's how time works, but damn, it's already 2025, and we're back behind the mics to talk about more goings on with the herd. And there's been a lot of it in this early year. You know, we're roughly a week in, and lots of additions to the football roster, lots of additions, changes to the football staff, some things we didn't know about the last time we recorded, and now things we do know about. So we've got a lot of cool stuff that we can talk about, and who knows where this conversation is going to take us. But I'm ready to just kind of hang out and talk the herd for a little bit. And I'll tell you what, everybody knows by now you can, find us on Twitter, obviously at ThunderCast_pod. ThunderCast.Online is really where you need to bookmark and open a tab on your phone or whatever and save that there, because that's where our awesome portal tracker is. Everybody that's coming and going, pretty much, if we can verify it, it's going to go on the website. And by and large, we try to wait until the player themselves makes an announcement, and then it makes it to the website. But that is an awesome article. Russ works really hard on that to try to keep it accurate and keep it up to date. So if you're curious how the herd's doing in the portal under the Tony Gibson era, that is the single best place to go find out what's going on with the herd. Russ, what do you know, man? I mean, we're going to get into the show here in a minute, but it's been a little over a week since we've talked. Both of us are under the blanket of this crazy icy snow, as much of the region is suffering. I saw earlier on Twitter that they were calling it thunder snow. I've never seen that before, and I thought that's pretty freaking cool. So that's pretty cool. But anyway, what's been going on the last week?
Been cold. That's about it.
Okay.
No, just a real quick thing about ThunderCast.Online. I appreciate the words about that portal tracker, but we have had about 19,000 unique visitors. That's not how many views. That's how many unique visitors. It's up around 27,000. I didn't check it today. It's been over 24 hours since I checked to see how many clicks and views it's had, but it's getting a lot of respect going around the social media circles as the accurate place to go. Because On3 is not going to care about every single person that comes in or leaves, and neither is 24/7. And we just try to be an aggregate of everybody that's in, out, and I can add probably 5 more names, but they haven't been verified. So until that happens, I care about accuracy.
Yeah, some of that we're going to talk about on the show, because we can speculate on the show.
Sure.
Things that we feel good about. We did that last episode with names we felt good about and certain coaching hires, and those turned out to be accurate. But there's some changes to that we're going to have to talk about this week. But anyway, it's a very fluid situation, as you could expect all of these to be. And, guys can commit one day and open their recruitment again the next day. And coaches can be hired and then get plucked away pretty quickly. And we saw that this week. But I want to get into some of those things and talk about some of the players that have come in or at least committed since we last did an episode. But I can't do any of that until you give me a quick word from our sponsors at Leasure Oliver PLLC.
If you've been hurt in a wreck, call the law firm of Leasure Oliver PLLC. Find them at 304carwreck.com.
Thank you. I'm sure they appreciate that. And I would like to say that 19,000 unique visitors to that article is pretty impressive. I mean, that's damn impressive. And I think that is an awesome opportunity to say, if you would like to have advertise your business at ThunderCast.Online and get some of those eyeballs on what you provide, hey, man, reach out, because there's always room for more folks that want to grow alongside the ThunderCast. We had a really good year last year. You know, we didn't put out everything like our 2024 year in review, because a lot of it is the same. But we had a really, really good year last year. We put tickets in the hands of a lot of herd fans. We sent a lot of people to games, and that's at the essence of what we like to do. Herd athletics is obviously the benefactor of what we do here at the ThunderCast. That's what it's aimed at doing. And as long as people keep supporting us and keep listening to our shows, watching our shows, following us on social media, it makes our reach larger, and ultimately is by proxy, those folks are helping Marshall. You know, so thanks to everybody that continues to follow and share our links and listen to our show. Pushed over 7,800 followers on Twitter the other day. That's pretty amazing. I saw like a memory on one of them social media sites, and it was celebrating us getting 500 followers.
I can remember that. I'm telling you, it was one of those milestone numbers when you hit it. And you know, now it seems paltry because my personal account has 500 some, and a lot of those are from over a decade ago whenever I joined. So it's not like I've got a large following over there, which is totally fine by me. But you know, you look back at a number like 500 and how at the time we were like, man, hey, we've got 500, but now, you know, you get 500 a month. You know, something like that.
Averaging 100 a week over the last, you know, 6-7 weeks. I mean, it's pretty amazing, and it just speaks to the herd fans. If they like you, they like you. Yeah. That's really what it is, and it's. I think that we're doing the right thing, and people appreciate that. So thanks to everybody that continues to support us. But look, let's talk about what's going on with the herd football program. You know, we touched on that last episode. It was all about the big influx of initial commitments since Tony Gibson was hired, the initial ironing out of the staff. And now some of that has changed, and we'll talk about that. But first, you know, I want to talk about the handful of guys, 6 or 7 guys since in the last week that announced a commitment to the herd that we could verify. There may be a couple of others that, you know, don't post on X or whatever. Maybe they only do it on Instagram or something like that. But we got 6 with a super strong speculation of a 7th that came this afternoon. I just haven't seen an announcement tweet, but I'm still going to talk about it. So a trio of wide receivers, a running back, linebacker, defensive back, and then famously last episode in that big list, I said what you don't see is a quarterback. And today we believe that we have a quarterback commitment as well. So let's go back to where we left off, which was with wide receiver Xavier Short. He comes over from Appalachian State. Some folks had pointed out to me that he is originally from the Wayne area, like as a kid, and didn't play high school ball at Wayne, which you alluded to, and they moved to South Carolina, so he was on the South Carolina roster for a few years, transferred to App State, and now transfers to the herd. Pretty decent build, played tight end. Now his tight end's like hybrid wide receiver guy. Who knows where he's going to fit in. 6'2", 210, really intriguing prospect, a guy that just needs to get some game rep, I think. Needs to have an opportunity to show what he can do, you know, instead of being in some crowded rooms, you know what I mean? And this is a great situation, I think, as it is a great situation for Ben Turner, who we'll talk about, and Majon Wright, who we'll talk about here in a minute. This wide receiver room is completely revamped. So a lot of those opportunities are up for grabs. So this is a really good situation for anybody that's a wide receiver. But what do you got for me on Xavier Short?
Well, so I want to revisit a little blurb I talked about when Antonio Harmon came here, because it's very similar. They started out at a different school. If you remember, this was way back when Harmon was there with the Pirate Leach, and of course he passed away, but they tried to make him into a tight end, and then he was going back to the wide receiver position this last year, and he did not play the entire year. He redshirted, as far as I know, medical redshirt. Very similar here. We had a tight end at South Carolina, and a tight end is not going to be built the same way as a wide receiver most of the time. So I'm sure there was a little body composition change when he went to the wide receiver position. And this was going to be his first year at wide receiver at Appalachian State, but he was behind their number one receiver in there. So just needs some reps. He needs to see the field. And this intrigues me the same way that Harmon does, because that they've already been in the tight end room and the wide receiver room. So that is a flex position that you already have, kind of the same way mismatch right now with Toby Payne. It seems to me like now we've got three really good mismatch guys.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I kind of like to have. I love the flexibility of dudes that can come inside and maybe pick up a blocking assignment, but they can also go out on the boundary and maybe give you that occasional go route, right? But it's all points in between. It's can you make a catch at all levels? Can you mismatch with somebody? Obviously, you're going to line up better. Defender is going to line up better in certain positions than others, but are you quicker than that linebacker that you've got to go up against? Or are you more physical and taller and more athletic than that defensive back that you've got to go up against? See, that to me is where the real flexibility comes in. And I'm not saying any of these guys that we're going to talk about are those guys. I'm saying on any given play, can you make that mismatch count? We've seen Toby do it. We know he can do it, right? And if you can have an accent player to go alongside that, maybe you can get them both on the field at the same time, which we thought hopefully we would see Cade Conley and Toby on the field at the same time and experience some of that. Just didn't really play out that way this year. But, maybe this is kind of that same type of thing.
Yeah.
But really intriguing prospect.
Yeah, and I don't want to make anybody with any kind of unfair comparisons to the great players that I'm getting ready to talk about. I do want to talk about historically here at Marshall, we have had that hybrid tight end, and we've seen it play out very well. One of the best that I can think of is Cody Slate. Just an absolute mismatch, as far as linebackers could not keep up with him. He was a deep threat at tight end. But he was big and strong enough to block. And if you put a defensive back on him for the speed, he was just going to overpower them. And in a totally different version of a hybrid was Gator Hoskins. He came here, he was a quarterback / wide receiver / tight end at his high school in Florida. And then he came here and we made him into a tight end, and he was just an absolute touchdown machine.
Absolutely.
So, you got to be a big mismatch to do what he was doing. And again, no unfair comparisons. I just love those hybrid players because sometimes you can catch lightning in a bottle, like with those two guys.
Yeah, and you can't even contribute those guys that you named to the same head coach. These are guys that came here and played in different systems under different leadership. Yeah. So it's not like, oh, well, Doc Holliday went out and found these certain type of guys. Right. No. It's not always Doc, I mean, but we've had great tight ends that were more of a traditional tight end that had the ability every now and again, but Cody Slate is the best example to me of your textbook flex guy. But that's a big name in herd circles to live up to, right? And I'm with you. I don't like providing a direct comparison and say, oh, this guy's the next Cody Slate, because we don't know that.
Yeah.
But what that does to me, what that says to me is like, what you're doing is giving herd fans an idea of, oh, okay, well, I remember watching Cody play, and he was very dynamic. So this is kind of what they're talking about. Yeah, that's more so what it is.
Yeah, someone that you can line up that's a mismatch against the guys across from him. That's all that I'm hoping for with having three on the roster. And there's more than three, really, but now we're bringing in two guys that specifically in the last year switched from tight end to wide receiver.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. And like you say, you compare that with the known entity at tight end right now on this Marshall roster, and you've got a pretty good amount of flexibility coming out of that room. You know, just right now it could, but we're a long way from portal being done and recruiting being done. Like, we're a long way. Then came wide receiver prospect Ben Turner from West Liberty, 5'9", 175, local kid, another Spring Valley one. We're really lighting up the Spring Valley pipeline. It's a short pipeline, man. Maybe the shortest pipeline ever, unless they run one down the hill from Huntington High School. But Ben Turner comes back. Apparently, I caught this on Twitter. I don't know if you know this. We've got a softball commit. And she said, I saw her say, her brother was coming home, and I thought, wow, okay, so we got two athletes from the Turner family coming to play for the Herd now. But this is one that I want to talk about for a couple of different reasons, not just the local tie, got some production already, but there's other things. So what turns your crank about Ben Turner?
Again, unfair comparisons, but he was one of those wide receivers up there that kind of did it all. Of course, you can think about returning kicks every now and then. It's not like he did it a lot. I think he had 6. One of them, 1 year, he had 5 of his 6, and he had 106 yards in there. So he did a good job at it when he did it. But he threw a pass for a touchdown. Seemed like he had a couple other things. I was going to try to bring it up here, but it reminded me of like when Wes Welker was in the NFL and they had him doing, he even kicked an extra point. It just seems like Ben Turner was the Mr. Do Everything up at West Liberty. So not trying to compare him to Wes Welker, but he's the type of athlete, from what I've seen, people that have known him for a long time, plus looking at his stats, that if we said, hey, I need you to go out and do this, he's going to do it. He put in his Twitter profile also a holder. He was a holder up there. And that may have been where he got a touchdown pass. Maybe it was hey, I'm going to hold, and they fake the kick and he throws it. But he just seems like a jack of all trades football guy. And when you can get football guy in there, that's something I really get excited about.
Well, that's the thing, and this is why I want to talk about this prospect, because it seems like offensive linemen get recruited pretty heavily out of Spring Valley, and even defensive linemen to a certain degree. Porter was a linebacker type guy and came in and turned into a really great defensive lineman for the Herd, or defensive end for the Herd. But they are really well known for those offensive linemen. They've had a lot of success putting offensive linemen at big programs, and there's one that's probably going to be a potential first-round draft pick this year. But it's these guys that are like he's just a football guy. It's like, go out and do. We need this. Can you do it? I got you, coach. I can do that. And there was another guy probably around the same time these guys probably played together, and son of a former Herd great, right? Grayson Malashevitz. He went to Morgantown and played for a number of years, and I think he finished out his career down there at Valdosta State this past year. He was like that, like very versatile player, just all over the field, running the ball, receiving, returns, all that kind of thing. And I thought when I saw that Ben Turner had committed, I thought, okay, maybe this is another iteration of that type of guy, which Huntingtonians, love that type of guy, just a blue collar, work your ass off guy, earn every rep type of guy. And I'm going to be honest with you. When I see 5'9", 175, that makes me feel pretty good, because I'm like, hey, this kid's living the dream that I didn't. It's like he's built like me, but probably looks a hell of a lot better. You know what I mean? But I like the undersized guy that's willing to go out there and take those hits. This is a violent game, and you take hits and you get up and ready for another play. That's pretty cool. I can dig that, man. I think Ben Turner will, if he gets an opportunity and he can make the most of that opportunity. I think what you're doing is looking at a guy who's going to become a fan favorite freaking quick, that type of thing.
Again, not comparing, but let's talk about undersized wide receivers. We just had one came in last year, Elijah Metcalf, he was listed as 5'8". I'm looking at it right now, 5'8", 168. And I've heard that the 5'8" was generous, that he was closer to the 5'6" range.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be 6'2" at wide receiver to make an impact. Tommy Schuler, again, not trying to do unfair comparisons. I'm just trying to put in the mindset of, this is one of those guys. Troy Brown was undersized at wide receiver.
Well, so was Willie Johnson.
Yeah. I mean, we've had a slew here to prove that you do not have to be 6'4" as a wide receiver.
I mean, it helps, but
it does help.
It doesn't hurt if you're a guy. If you're just a guy that makes plays and loves to play football, then your height and weight really doesn't matter. That
you know what Tommy Schuler did better than just about any Herd player that I've seen here was get open. Mm-hmm. He just ran routes and he got open. Mm-hmm. And if you can do that, I don't care if you're 5'4", if the quarterback can hit you and you catch it, fall to the ground.
Yeah. If the quarterback can trust that you will be where you're supposed to be and open, and then will catch the football, you will become a target. Really quick, really quick.
And none of these players we're talking about, we don't know where they're going to be on the depth chart. We're not predicting any kind of stats or anything like that. We're just saying what intrigues us right now when we look at them. And 46 receptions for 846 yards and 5 touchdowns. I don't care where you at. That's over 4 a game or right at 4 a game. I think he had 44 in or around the 44 in 11 games. So he's catching the ball. He's getting open.
Yeah. So you're looking at 4 catches a game for just under 80 yards a game. I mean, that plays, dude. That plays at any level.
A touchdown every other game.
Yeah, that will play at any level on any team. Any coach will take that type of production. That doesn't mean you're a number 1 guy, 2, 3. Doesn't matter. Wherever you line up, if you can give your team 800 yards and 40 catches and 5 or 6 touchdowns, any coach will take that.
Look at our stats from last year. Split his stats in half and see how it would match up against what we did last year from any number of athletes that we had. It would still be pretty good on our roster. Yeah. I'm not going to say that you can go from West Liberty to Marshall and put up the same exact stats or that you're guaranteed to get half of them. Mm-hmm. But again, those type of production stats really play.
Yeah, and the other thing, you also can't say that you won't do that. That's what's great about college ball.
You can do better. You can come here and get better. 60 receptions, because you're a guy like Schuler that gets open every damn time.
Yep. So let's talk about. I wish I knew if it was a Majan or a Majan or however, but I'm gonna say Majan, right? 6'3", 215. Another wideout comes over from Valdosta. I like this for a different reason. Because Valdosta just went to the D2 National Championship game. Mm-hmm. They were undefeated going into that National Championship game. They lost to Ferris State, so they're your D2 runner-up with 1 loss on the year. So this guy's been – everybody knows the story of Valdosta, not just this year. Mm-hmm. For freaking ever, it seems like. Yeah. They're just a blue blood on the D2 ranks. And so that's a program that knows about winning, And this is a guy that went down there and performed and was a player for them and, played a role in an undefeated team that made a run to a national championship game. And again, it doesn't matter what level you're in. If you do that, then you know what it takes to prepare to be a winner. You know what it takes to prepare to be a champion. It's a culture thing too, is like that locker room culture has to be right. So when you go get guys that are in a culture of winning, and they have it drilled into their heads and the culture of their program is about preparation and working and not being outworked, that translates. Again, I don't care where you go. You want guys like that bring that into your room. And the more of those guys that you can get, the better, right? I'm not saying he's the next, Randy Moss or anything like that. I'm saying I like this for those reasons on top of the production. I think that's awesome. And of course, we just talked about how 5'9", 175 isn't a downside, but 6'3", 215 sure is an upside.
It sure is.
So that's something that you can definitely say, ooh, I like that. I mean, look what Fitz did. He comes in here with that type of build. Everybody was wowing about it. And all he did all year long was make incredible catch after incredible catch. So these trio of wideouts all bring something different to me that intrigues me and makes my brain tickle. But man, very, very cool trio of guys to have hit on in this first year or this first month of the year, essentially. First week of the year.
Let's talk about what he did in the COVID year of 2020. He was a true freshman, 18 years old, I'm assuming, but true freshman. They only played 5 games, and he, what was it, second on the team? Second leading receiver on the team as a true freshman at Arizona. Even though it's COVID year, they still played 5 games, and in those 5 games as a true freshman, he saw the field, 2 was their second leading receiver.
Right.
So it tells me that he has that ability. He needs that chance. And at 6'3", 215, he is a head start over someone 5'9", 175 just because of that. Doesn't mean that he's going to be above him in the depth chart. What it does mean to me is 6'3", 215 are qualities that you can't teach someone else.
Right.
He just has that built in already with that size.
I wish somebody would teach me 6'3". I would have a master's class in height if I could get one.
Man, I used to be 6'3", as you know, and the last time that you and I took a photo at the tailgate, and I look and a quarterback, Rakeem Cato, that was listed as 5'11" to 6 foot was over my height. So I've lost a vertebrae or 3 in there somewhere.
I'm just stuck at the. Then the running back room gets a boost a little bit. Joan Barbie comes from McNeese State, 5'9", 181. And I tell you, man, running backs coach seems to be pretty pumped up about this. And I think he's pumped up about a lot of the guys that he's bringing in, just the overall look of that room. Because again, you're losing a lot out of that room. AJ Turner's gone, Houston, Ethan Payne's gone. Houston has, those guys have exhausted eligibility. So your top 3 leading rushers are gone. You've got to rebuild the room, and we've lost some other guys that were with the program to the portal. So it's going to be a lot of new faces in that Herd running back room. But I tell you, the running back room is one of these for the Herd that has not had a lot of trouble rebuilding in recent years. And that's wild to think, because we've had some really, really good runners over the last, I'm just going to say decade, because that's a really, easy time frame, but I don't know them all exactly. But, you start naming guys like Brendan Knox and Ali and AJ Turner, and it's a lot of talent that just seem to just get reloaded. Different situation now, new coaching staff, new everything, but still the Herd just for some reason has not had a problem reloading running back talent. And Joan Barbie is the next, the newest, latest addition to that running back room.
Yeah. So as I put on the portal tracker in 2022, he redshirted. In 2023, he was kind of buried on the depth chart, and the running back room had some injuries, so it sprung him into playing time, and all he did was explode. And in the games that he was there, in 5 games, he had 421 yards on 65 attempts, 6.5 average, scored 3 touchdowns, 2 100-plus yard rushing games that season. Again, in 5 games, he had 2 of those. He had over 100 yards. And then in 2024, in 12 games, 831 yards on 149 carries. So he has the pedigree behind him. We've had some success. You and I have talked about this before from McNeese. Andre Sam was very, very good for us here. Just because they're at different levels doesn't mean that they're not players. We brought in some players from various levels here, and Andre Sam was a really, really good one.
Yeah, he's got to be on a short list of best. I don't know. Was he here 2 years or just 1 year?
No, he was here 1 year, and then
Okay.
he went
I
to
thought so. Tulane
LSU.
and LSU. Yeah. I thought it was 2 years, or I thought it was 1 year. He's got to be on a short list, maybe like the top 15, 20. And I'm not saying he's number 20. I'm just saying if you did a list of 15 or 20 top 1 year players for the Herd, Andre Sam's going to be on that list. And what he did in that year was phenomenal. He had the game of his life against Notre Dame, if you remember. It was like a 10-tackle game. He was, of all the guys that made the big plays, the Gilmore INT, the Owen Porter INT, it was Andre Sam that went out there and had the workhorse game, like the didn't capture any of the glory because he didn't have the flashy plays, but he was the consistent guy in the secondary all freaking day. And I appreciate that. And even though he moved on and went to LSU and completed his collegiate career, he's still a guy that like kind of keeps tabs on the Herd. You know what I mean? And I think that's awesome. I mean, how many times has a guy left and just kind of not looked back, until it's until you see him post like I'm going to the draft thing, and they've got like 5 teams that they played for, which I don't get into that, but Andre hasn't been that way. He's like kind of keeping tabs on the Herd. It makes me think he really enjoyed being here.
Yeah.
And I don't blame the guy for leaving, honestly, because he was from Louisiana and he had an opportunity to go to the marquee university in Louisiana and play. And he played. He didn't just become a depth piece. He played for them. So I don't get mad at that,
And just briefly, the reason that he was leaving was Guidry was going to Tulane and was only there 2 weeks or something.
Remember, he committed to Tulane.
Yeah.
And then when Guidry went to Miami, he went to LSU.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, coming from McNeese, Barbie really has a good, intriguing pedigree as far as, 6.5 yards per carry when you've been buried on the depth chart. And sometimes that happens, you get your shot and you just kick it into another gear and you never look back.
Yeah. We saw that to a certain degree when Knox got his shot. He got his shot by way of injury, and he came in and was just like, holy shit, this kid's amazing. And then he had to split time for a little while, and we just had 2 great backs in the backfield. But that's the kind of thing. He was thrust into action, hadn't really played a lot, didn't really know what he had, and then all of a sudden, wow, you have statistically one of the most sure-handed running backs that you've ever had play for Marshall, not counting the yards and the production. But little did you know, you had on the roster one of the most sure-handed backs ever. I think he had something like almost 600 career carries and 1 fumble. That's amazing. That's amazing. But yeah, so you can't just judge. You can't look at these schools anymore. Anymore. You can't do this anymore and look and go, oh, that's where this guy's coming from, so he's obviously not any good. Just so as the same as you can't go, oh, wow, this guy's coming from, Power 4 school XYZ, he must be awesome. Yeah. Talent is everywhere, right? Talent is everywhere. So we've made a lot of progress. You and I talked about this before we hit record. It's not just McNeese. You get Andre Sam from McNeese the same year you get Isaiah Norman from Austin P, I think it was. And that safety duo was amazing. So we've had a lot of luck here lately in the FCS ranks. And let's see if Joshon Barbie, like I said, just like the wide receiver room, the running back room should be wide open for somebody to come out of the pack and grab a hold of being running back 1. I don't think you can look at anybody and go, you're the number 1 guy right now, because top 3 rushers just graduated or left. It's wide open.
Well, let's talk about a parallel real quick to the linebacker room when we were talking about that last year. And we said, hey, who's it going to be? Who's going to step up? And it was a concern for us. 2 guys really stepped up. More than that, stepped up all year long. But 2 were the front runners there and just really had some amazing game in, game out input or output. And I hope that we see the same here from this wide receiver room, this running back room.
This linebacker room, honestly, if we're going to talk about that, you lose Watson to UK, you lose Jaden Yates to Ole Miss. I mean, that's a lot of production. It was a question mark a year ago. These guys came in and kicked ass, and that leads right into this next prospect that committed the other day is Javay Gilmore from Mississippi State. what leaps off the page to you, Russ, has got to be the build, 6'4", 235. You still got to be able to play, right? You've got to be able to be a football guy. But if you're a measurables guy and you're like, wow, I really like the look of 6'4", 235 as a linebacker, I mean, you've obviously still got to be able to move and be able to be fast enough to make a play, or else your 6'4", 235 never helps you if you can't be there. But another one of those interesting things. And linebackers, I don't know why this year particularly, I feel good about who comes in. Just kind of like automatically, just because of Tony Gibson's pedigree.
I was getting ready to make that point.
Being an outstanding linebackers coach and DC, right? So that position, unlike the rest, I just kind of feel better about that. I don't know why, other than, it doesn't mean it will be better. I just feel better about it.
Well, independently, we didn't talk about this, but I was getting ready to make the same point, and I wanted to wait until this specific player, because it's a microcosm of the entire class of players that we bring in through the transfer portal and through recruitment. You don't want to bring somebody in if they're not going to be a good fit for your system.
Right.
And someone that may not have had the production like this person here that we're talking about at Mississippi State does not mean that he's going to come here and not be thrust into a starting role and have every down played and it be a totally different system. I think that they're going to bring in fits. And I think that they are going to bring in specifically, like you said, linebacker fits for this. I mean, none of this has been announced, but if we do not run a 3-3-5 stack, I would be shocked.
More than shocked.
Yeah. So of course you're going to be bringing in the type of nose tackle that you need in a 3-3-5. Of course you're going to be bringing in the defensive backs that you need in a 3-3-5, and you're going to bring in the linebackers that you need at a 3-3-5. Yeah. 6'4", 235 from the SEC, even though we have been saying you don't need to be from the SEC, you don't need to be from the Big Ten. At some point, they were on the radar enough to get offers and signed by these types of schools. It tells you the potential that they could reach. And 6'4", 235 at linebacker, again, you can't teach that.
Yeah, and to drive home your point, you're gonna have to be a very, very not physical. I mean, you've got to be physical, but you've got to be able to move. If there's only 3 down linemen and your second level is just 3 linebackers, you're gonna have to be able to move to pick up the slack for not having that extra down lineman. You're just by nature, you would think like Vince Wilfork is not lining up at nose tackle for us, right? Like no, all jokes aside, you're not gonna have that type of guy to plug up that type of space. So you're going to have guys that can cover some ground, So that's a good point about a 3-3-5. It really is. But there's been a lot. It's a lot. This is so many wholesale changes across a lot of rooms, what via transfer or via exhaustion of eligibility, whatever. A lot of talent lost at a lot of places. And defensive line is one of those, again, that Marshall has historically for a long time, probably a decade plus, reloaded. They haven't rebuilt. I cannot remember one rebuilding defensive line year in a very long time. It has been a reload.
There's been a lot of overlap of some all-time greats and well above average players here that it seems like no matter who leaves from that position, you've got so-and-so in there. And we have been crazy deep the last 2 or 3 years there. And now it's going to be a different scheme. It's not going to be, do you need to have 15 of them on the roster when there's only 3 that you're going to be playing at any given time in a 3-3-5? Probably not. You're going to need to load up more on your defensive backs and your linebackers than you were on your defensive tackles. One thing I'm not worried about is Ralph Street.
Yeah, why would you?
I think he has proven. I mean, just year in, year out. I mean, you can just say, hey, whoever comes here, he's going to get the most out of them.
Yeah. And you know what? I think we're at the point now to where, he was getting a certain amount of respect when he was D-line coach and defensive coordinator. I think it was Florida A&M, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But now he's been doing this so much at Marshall and putting out guy after guy after guy. And these guys know, I think prospects now know, hey, Ralph Street is a guy that I want to go, be coached by.
Yeah.
I think that and anytime you move up, whether you like it or not, like if Ralph were to leave and go to, a big time school, like a big time school, guys would immediately go, okay, I want to go. Now they're on my radar. I'm not talking about the Ohio States. I'm saying it's like somebody that's like, I'm just going to say Pitt. I'm going to say Pitt. It's like Ralph goes to Pitt and they go, oh, well, now some defensive line prospects are going to consider Pitt that otherwise were not considering Pitt. That's what I meant with that.
Yeah.
Last one of the big block here was defensive back Cam Smith coming over from Jackson State. Pretty big guy for a DB, 6'2", 198. I think I don't know, is that 2 or 3 now from Jackson State in this cycle?
I think that we got 3 from there. I think we had 2 different defensive tackles, but one of them had gone to Jackson State, before they went elsewhere. Remember when we got the 2 big nose tackle?
Yeah, one of them here, Tyus Martin, D-line from Jackson State.
Yeah. The other one in that had been at Jackson State and then went somewhere else before.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So I think that's 3 now that has been there at any given point.
Cool. Well, what about Cam? I mean, 6'2" to 198 in a, geez, just again, we can keep saying this a lot. There's just a lot of rebuilding to do. We lost a lot through the portal in this. That's the biggest culprit of the DBs this year is the portal. But God, I think we've brought in probably 6. Without looking, just off the top of my head, probably 6.
Yeah, here we've got Smith was at Eastern Michigan before he went to Jackson State, and listen to his 2023 stats at EMU. 44 tackles, 23 of those solo, 2 passes defended, 1 forced fumble, 1 interception. So he did a really good job at the FBS level before going down to Jackson State. So, the size plays, he's had production before. I'm excited for him because of that 6'2", 198 size. We talked about.
Don't we just freaking contradict ourselves a lot? It seems like it doesn't matter, but it does matter. No, it's not contradictory. It's just like these are the things that get us get our ears perked up a little bit.
Yeah, and it's not contradictory because we talked about it being an anomaly, but you cannot teach the size. You have a built-in advantage over that. And we had talked about this before when we were talking about bringing in a certain height of defensive back before. If you're going up against 6'3", 6'4" wide receivers, a 5'10" defensive back can still get it done, but they're going to be at a disadvantage. The arm length, the reach, everything is going to be bigger on average as the 6'3", 6'4" wide receiver. So if you start bringing in a 6'2" defensive back, you take away a lot of that height advantage and that reach advantage. So I'm real excited to see him here as well.
Yeah, me too. Look, here's the thing. I went back real quick on our ThunderCast.Online transfer portal tracker, and I accidentally hit the nail on the head. 6 DBs we've brought in so far in this current cycle. So we got one more to talk about, and it's still speculation out there. I can check real fast, honestly. I just haven't seen a commitment tweet from the player, and I like to see that before, that's what we really like to see. And it's not out there yet, but it is speculated heavily, confirmed by many national media sources that Jacksonville State quarterback Zion Turner has committed to the Herd today. And a lot of Herd fans might go, that name sounds familiar. Well, he was the quarterback at UConn when the Herd played them in the Myrtle Beach Bowl back in 2022.
2022.
Yeah, and he played really well in that game, but I think he was a freshman.
He was.
Geez, what I'm trying to think of some of the storylines I thought I remembered from him. I wanted to say that he was like a really, really productive high school quarterback, won multiple state championships or something like that, and then ended up at UConn. But anyway, originally from Miami, Florida, I believe. I don't know. It's just a lot of things. This is a long time ago. I'm just trying to dig back into my vault there, which we know is not very good. But it is heavily speculated right now that Zion Turner has joined the Herd and is now a member of the quarterback room, which is still pretty thin. I will say that from the get-go. I don't think this signals anything, right? I wouldn't call this like I'm not saying we are or we aren't, but I'm saying you can't just go, oh, well, we've got our quarterback one. That's not a fair statement to say because there's going to be a lot of preparation, a lot of spring ball, a lot of everything that goes along into this. And I don't think we are done at quarterback right now.
I don't think so either. I think you've got to have depth at that room.
Yeah, currently right now, as of this moment on the roster, there are 4. And probably most fans are going to know 2 of them, right? Colin Parachek and Ja'Kai Long. Chase Massey is a sophomore from Winfield, and then Aiden Karsh, a sophomore from Miami, Florida, are the other 2 that are listed currently right now on the Herd Zone roster. Zion Turner would make 5, and all of those guys are not going to be in the actual mix for your quarterback one spot, right? That's just, you've got walk-on guys on there. You've got guys that are just scout team guys, that type of thing. But I do think you'll probably see another quarterback at least, maybe 2, because there's going to be a lot of portal action still. College football season isn't done yet, man. We're still playing games out here, So there's a lot. And based on those moves, you'll see dominoes fall. Guys will re-enter the portal. Guys will lose out, depth chart spots after spring ball. They'll enter the portal. Like all these, there's a lot out there. So the panic, if there's panic by Herd fans, it's completely unjustified, and you're just panicking for no reason.
Yeah.
So
the ad drop date for Marshall is January 17th, and we've got until that day to still have someone come in and be eligible for spring. Mm-hmm. But think of all the people that are going to come into the portal in the spring after the spring game. So, it's not a situation where I would say we have to hurry and take someone. We just need to look because, again, you and I are both still high on Ja'Kai Long as well.
Very. I am very high on Ja'Kai Long. I don't, and this is nothing against Turner. It's nothing against Parachek. Nothing against none of these guys. The kid just he went out and performed in the spring last year.
Yep.
And I think it was a tactful approach. We've talked about this before. This is a true freshman at the time. I don't know that you put that into the hands of a true freshman quarterback when you're breaking in an entire new offense in what was a contract year for your coach. It was do or die, right? And it ultimately didn't matter. He left anyway.
And the early schedule that you had to face on the road against Virginia Tech and on the road against Ohio State.
You're just not going to throw a kid to the wolves like that. And, but now this is a different story. Now this is – I don't care. Like, guess who game 1 is against this year, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter, right? That's not going to matter. Somebody's going to have to be the quarterback, and I'm just as high on Ja'Kai Long than anybody else that we have on that roster, and anybody else that we will bring in on that roster. I'm not saying it's his job to lose, but I am saying you just can't discount him because he's not a portal quarterback. That's ridiculous. Why would you do that?
The word out of that quarterback room was he may have had the most potential out of all of them that was in there, and even going into the spring as a true freshman or coming out of the spring as a true freshman, there were, saying, well, we might be just as good putting him out there as Stone Earl, who hasn't been here yet, or Braylon Braxton, who was here. Mm-hmm. I want to talk about Turner real quick. couple of things. One, he's coming from Jacksonville State, and because that's where your offensive coordinator is coming from, you would think that you wouldn't bring him in just to bring in a warm body like we were talking about earlier. You're going to bring him in because you know that he fits that system and you think that he would do well in it. And I have to think that that's why your offensive coordinator is saying, yeah, let's bring this guy in. Wanted to go on high school because you said it's been a long time and you couldn't remember it all. Prepped at St. Thomas Aquinas High School in Fort Lauderdale.
That's right.
Led his team to a combined 37-2 record in his career. If anybody listening or watching does not know, that team puts out a lot of good players.
St. Thomas Aquinas is a Florida blue blood high schools. Man. They are.
Was a 3-star prospect after he threw for 2,103 yards and 25 touchdowns. Led his team to a 14-1 record as a senior in his career. Led St. Thomas to 3 straight state titles and threw for 4,951 yards and 59 touchdown passes. Signed with UConn out of high school over offers that included Coastal Carolina, Miami, FIU, Texas A&M, Louisville, Toledo, Kentucky, LSU, Arkansas, Pittsburgh, Jack State, and Temple. Mm-hmm. So production aside or lack thereof, because he did not win the starting job at Jack State last year, the pedigree is there.
Again, you're a couple of years removed from a stellar high school career. He played really well. I think I'm trying to get these UConn stats up because he
was a true freshman, and he played there. I think it was like 1,400 yards. It wasn't anything crazy, but UConn that year as well, they went, I believe, 6-6 to make the bowl, and that was kind of maybe Jim Mora's first year there. Mm-hmm. And so it was come in, let's start a whole new system. He's a true freshman. He gets, I don't think he started as a starter, but he ended up taking over. It's just a lot of things you can't really just say, well, he only threw for 1,400 yards. Kid had a really good arm. I can remember. It seemed like as a true freshman in that bowl game, if I remember correctly, it was more of an accuracy issue on the deep ball.
Yeah.
Well, we're 2 years removed from that now.
Right. We're 2 years removed from that. And what sucks is there are not a lot of huge stats to come along with those 2 years. Like I mentioned, there's basically nothing at Jack State. I think he had 1 pass attempt, no yards, no rushing yards. Like there's nothing there. So yeah, you're bringing in a guy that's familiar with your OC because he knows what he's got. This is far less of a gamble than your normal portal quarterback, right? He saw him in practice every day. He knows what the kid can do. I'm just saying, and again, this is nothing against him. He could turn out to be quarterback number 1 week 1. I'm just saying it would be unfair right now to anoint anybody to any starting position, much less the quarterback. I think did a lot of Herd fans not learn their lesson last year when they all wanted, XYZ player and then they wanted somebody different the week after that. And, then everybody kind of basically rallied around Braxton after a few games that he was starter. But there were still people calling for, Cole Pennington to get in the game because their heart wanted to see him play. And I want the best player playing. I want the guy that gives the Herd the best chance to win football games. If that's Zion Turner, great. If it's Jaquai Long, great. If it's somebody else that's not even in Huntington yet, great. It's all about winning football games right now.
Yeah, and this is nothing against Turner, but Let's say absolute worst case scenario. We bring in a capable backup that knows this system. That's great. We need somebody.
Yeah.
You can't tell me looking at that QB roster that we've got 2 that redshirted last year. Well, 3 that redshirted last year in Karsh, Massey, and Long, and that they would now be redshirt freshmen. And then you got Colin Parachek, who only got 1 pass, I believe, and that was in that bowl game against UTSA. So there's 1 pass out of 4 players on our roster right now before Turner comes in. So if Turner is not the guy, the worst case scenario is we brought in someone that already knows the system and can help push whoever the guy is and help them learn how to do it better. I think it's a win all around. So that's why I'm not one of these guys that gets like, oh man, he's it for sure. All these wide receivers we talked about, running backs, I can tell you why I'm excited about them. I'm not going to tell you, well, yeah, I think he's going to come in here and he's going to rush for 1,800 yards. Yeah, he's going to catch 100 passes. Nothing like that. I try not to live and die on the cliff. But worst case scenario, if Turner is that backup guy, we did a really good thing today.
Sure. And what you're hoping is all these guys come in and push one another so much that it's almost impossible to pick a wide receiver 1, 2, and 3, or a quarterback 1, or a running back 1, because it's that heated in those rooms, and the competition is so close, and the production is so close. Look, we talked about all these wide receivers earlier, and you know what it's probably going to boil down to? Who has the best chemistry? It's if you can throw the best ball, great. If you can throw the football the farthest, awesome. If you've got no chemistry with your wide receivers and you can't complete a pass, well, that really doesn't help. So it's going to come down to who can form the best relationship with this wide receivers and tight ends, and again, ultimately move the football down the field and score points for Marshall. Russ, we've got through the players here. We've got a couple of coaching announcements that we've got to talk about. And then, I don't know, if you got nothing else, we'll just kind of look to wrap this one up. But we speculated last week, or we didn't speculate, we just didn't know who was going to be the defensive coordinator for the Herd. It was still not announced out there. We had no names floating around there. Well, guess what? It turns out that newly rehired for his 180th term with the Marshall Thundering Herd, all-time great player and safeties coach this year, Shannon Morrison, is also going to be carrying the defensive coordinator load for the Herd. And I want to say right now, before we even talk about this, I want to give a shout-out to our buddy, Matt Heck. And a couple of years ago, we were doing a spring game thing and went up to feed the coaches, and Matt was in there with us, and we, just talking, and he was talking to Shannon and whatever, and he was like, "I'll tell you right now, that guy needs to be the next defensive coordinator." And Huff didn't make that move. He hired Seymour to be the defensive coordinator, and then Shannon was one of the coaches that got let go in the turnover at the end of the season. And I think it is so awesome that he is not only back, because nobody really bleeds the Herd like those guys do that played here and want to win for Marshall, right? But for him to be named defensive coordinator, I had to give a tip of the cap to Matt Heck, because he called that 2 years ago. He was just a year late and one coach in between from doing that. But what about the news of Shannon being the defensive coordinator?
Yeah, I'm for it. I've said on here several times that when you bring up Shannon's name, you're going to have some people that have said like, "Oh man, not bringing him back," because they think of it as a retread. But I think of it totally different than that. I think of it as a guy that bleeds Marshall so much that he's always going to come back here. And the only negative I've ever heard was when he was like, we're talking about 15 years ago, people saying, well, I don't think he's ready to be defensive coordinator at that stage of his coaching career. So this guy is going to be safeties and defensive coordinator. I think he knows a thing or two about safety play. I think that this is a great move. I think with the coaching staff saying, hey, we want to bring some Marshall guys in, what better guy to bring in? You've already got Ralph Street here. Now you're going to bring Shannon back. And again, I think, you joke, but I think this is his fifth stop with us.
I think so too. Yeah. But congratulations, right? I thought it was kind of a raw deal that he left, that he was one of the coaches that got let go because all he had done was continue the development of the great Eli Neal, who went on to be an LA Ram, and then you let that guy go. And he furthered the career of Stephen Dix Jr., who we mentioned earlier when we were off cam. And, he went on to leave the herd and go down to Arkansas and become an SEC linebacker again. And so that guy did great things, with the linebacker room. And I just thought it was a little bit of a raw deal. And, I'm glad to have him back, because those guys, like I said, nobody wants to win for the herd rather than former herd players and coaches. Last bit of note here is the herd's back on the market for a wide receivers coach. Came today that Theron Ake was hired by Oklahoma State. I'm not sure if it's to be wide receivers coach or just in an offensive assistant role. But nonetheless, quick cup of coffee as wide receivers coach for the herd, and on to another stop. So interesting, because a lot of wide receivers had just committed, like we said, this is a very fluid situation. I got no ill will, obviously. It's just like, this is how the nature of the world goes right now in college football. But the herd is now in the market for a wide receiver coach. I haven't really heard any names, because this just happened today. But I've got some names that I might consider if I was considering. But what do you think about Coach Ike moving on?
Well, so he was one of the lone holdovers from, he was on the staff. And I was excited to see that he was retained, because it made you really think that he wanted to be here. And I'm not saying that in a negative way now that he's moving on, because, if you're in a career to do what you do, and someone comes along and says, hey, I can further your career and put you here, you just got to take it. He was only here 1 year, if I remember correctly. I think that the same that I viewed with Cody Creel, who was still recruiting players here during the transfer and everything, and wasn't sure about where he was going to be or whatever, and he stayed to do his job. The same way I look at Theron Ake, or H, however you say his name. Apologize for saying it incorrectly. I've just never heard it. But that stood out to me, that those two guys were kind of the two lone people here besides Ralph, and they were still recruiting. They were still doing this. And then you see he's going to be a wide receivers coach. You're like, oh, great. He was a guy that was out here recruiting, and he was hitting the trail and all that, when, he didn't know if he was going to have a job here, didn't know who the next coach was going to be. Now I'd like to go over to who would be names that you could bring in. So you go back to that, and I'll jump in too.
Yeah. I mean, is there one, I just want to know, now that this opening is open, is there somebody that you're like, man, I'd really like to see this guy get a shot, or man, I'd really like to see us go after this guy? Who's that guy?
Man, we've got to go a long way. You were talking about how short that Spring Valley pipeline is. This guy's even closer. He's in the building, and it's Gunter Brewer. He's been a wide receivers coach just about everywhere. He was here from 96 to 99 as a wide receivers coach. He went to Minnesota as a wide receivers coach. He
obviously knows nothing about if he was a wide receiver coach here at that time.
He's been here forever, and I think that he's already in the room, and he's already in the building. And the only reason that they had him as tight end is because you would have Theron H fit in so much better as wide receivers coach at that point. But now you could slide him over and make somebody else tight end coach. And I think that to me would be the very first way that I would go. Now, I'm not Rod Smith. I'm not Tony Gibson. Those guys have trees, and they have connections everywhere. I'm just saying that we've already got Gunter Brewer right here.
Yeah. So that's not a bad idea. And that opens up another can of worms, and I want to go down that avenue in a minute. Let's say they don't do that. Let's talk about just wide receiver guys. Is there somebody out there that you go, hey, this, maybe we could do this? Maybe not. I heard one name earlier, and it really, really intrigued me, and I thought, that might be good. That might be good. And I heard a couple names, really. Like, I got into a conversation earlier. One, okay. But first, I thought about this for a number of years, especially here lately, that at some point it would be great to at least see. Now, this would be his first job, right, in college. But you go after Tommy Schuler, and not because he played here, and not because he was a productive wide receiver here. I don't know that you, the universe. I don't know that a lot of our listeners know what Tommy does. He's a wide receivers coach down at Miami Central, where he went to high school. And he has been churning out wide receiver talent for years down there. Years. Now, you want to talk about the South Florida pipeline with skill players again?
Yeah.
That's who you go talk to. You go talk to. Does it hurt that he's an all-time herd great? Nope, it sure as hell doesn't. Does it hurt that he has a lot of love for Marshall? Nope, it sure doesn't. But the guy has a pipeline from South Florida, Miami, Florida, Homestead, Boca, all these in that whole region, right? Miami-Dade, just book it. I think you maybe give him a call and see if he's interested in the job. Now, he's a South Florida guy, born and raised, always been down there. He might not have any interest in coming to Huntington to coach. But I'm just saying, even a phone call, if he's not interested in the job, might be enough to have him maybe start sending some guys this way. Do you know what I'm saying? Like that kind of thing. But first and foremost, I think that that's a dude that you might want to consider reaching out to.
That's a good name, and I hadn't considered that because the first thing that popped into my head was Gunter Brewer. I hope that anyone listening to this does not take this the wrong way, but it seems to me like a wide receivers coach is one of those positions that is filled before tight ends coach, and because maybe there's more wide receivers, different role in the offense, whatever it is, it seems like that tight end position, sometimes they've just said, well, we'll throw those with the offensive line coach as well. We did that. If you remember with Bill Legg, he did both in one season. Another time we've said, well, we're elevating an analyst or a GA up to that position or whatever. That's not a knock on a tight ends coach at all. I just think that wide receiver coach is a little more prominent, and there has been more passing game coordinator / wide receivers coach or co-offensive coordinator / wide receivers coach than you see those things with tight end. I think Gunter Brewer immediately leaps out because he's got ridiculous history as a wide receivers coach, but also in offensive coordinator positions and things like that. Passing game coordinator. That's why my brain went there, and you say, well, you just get a young up-and-comer and get him as a tight ends coach. And I hope that doesn't come across the wrong way.
No, it doesn't come across the wrong way to me. But as you're saying that, I'm thinking but your wide receivers, and this is not meant to be like a negative, but they're more that we used to toss around terms, not me and you, but the media people used to toss around terms like diva or prima donna. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's more of a flashy, more showy. And I want a young guy in that position that has done that and is kind of like okay with interacting with that. And I'm not saying Coach Brewer's not. I'm just saying that guy's older than me. You know what I mean? And I don't think I could relate to that too well. But a guy that's 10 years my junior, 15 years my junior, perhaps, that was a wideout, lived that life and lived it and still continues to live it in South Florida, might be something worth considering. I'm not saying he'd be better at it, but I'm saying that's such
the recruiting pipeline alone.
Yeah, that's just such a marquee position in this game nowadays that that would be one that I would at least consider. You might not make the call right now, but you might go, hey man, those pretty good points. I don't know who's listening to our show anymore and who isn't, but it's a pretty good one to consider. And I think it's also one that Herd fans would go, hell yes. They were happy when Dobson got elevated. Now he's at Southern Miss. Do with that whatever you wish. But there's other Herd greats out there that are continuing that can recruit at a high level for you in areas that you need to recruit. I just think it would be cool. Got another one for you if you don't want to after you're done talking about Tommy.
Oh, I've got another one too. So do you
Okay.
want to go first or
No,
me?
go please.
Troy Brown.
Oh, okay. Well, you think he'd
You
be
know,
down with that?
I don't know that he'd be
I mean, that's
down
a
with it.
genuine question. Now, you think?
Yeah.
Do you really think he would be like, yeah, I'd do that?
I don't know. I mean, his name pops up all the time from fans that they would like to see him back here in some sort of role. He's very close with Coach Bartram,
Hmm.
and they did that camp for years, the Bartram and Brown camp.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I think that he definitely knows wide receiver play. I
yeah, a little
think
bit.
that he definitely has the history for it and everything. I don't know if he would do that. Still has a house here, as far as I
Mhm.
know. He's definitely not left the game of football. He's just doing different things. Um, but that would be as intriguing to me as Tommy Schuler for different reasons.
Yeah, that's interesting. See, I wonder um, if not that he wouldn't be good at it. Obviously, he would be good at it. He's forgotten more about the game and that position than I will ever even learn.
Mm-hmm.
I think of it like at this stage in his life with what he probably has going on,
Mm-hmm.
other business ventures and things like that. That's why I asked, like, wow, do you think he would be interested, in doing that? That's what I think is cool about it, is like, would he even do it?
Well, you never know because I don't know him personally, but if I were in a situation like that, I might view that as something that, like, hey, at least for a year, 3 years or whatever, I would love to go back to my alma mater where I'm
Yeah,
beloved and, not be the head coach because, you can fall out of favor real quick as a head coach. And that's
yeah,
why I've always said, I don't think that Byron or Chad or somebody like that should be the ideal person to come back and risk their legacy.
hmm,
But I think as a position coach, yes, I'm going to give back, and yes, that would be kind of like a dream scenario for me. I could see that, but
yeah.
that's without me knowing him personally. I've spoken to him, but I've never said, "Hey, Troy,
Got any interest?
would you ever come back and be our wide receivers coach 15
Yeah.
years?"
See, and that's another reason why I think that's the same reason why I think that, guys like Tommy might not be interested in doing that, because they have a legacy here, and he was just inducted into the Hall of Fame, and but still, it's Troy and Tommy, though both great, are on two different stratospheres in herd lore.
Yeah.
The other one I want to talk about before we get out of here is this is kind of makes sense. Uh, why not give a call to Ryan Switzer? He's out there in Tulsa. Um, he was their wide receivers coach out there. He was named interim head coach. Now they've hired a head coach. And as far as I know, he's still out there as their wide receivers coach. Why not give him a call and see if he's interested in it? And you're talking about a West Virginia high school legend who went down and really created a name for himself at UNC. Multi-year player in the NFL. I mean, talk about relatable, talk about the pedigree, talk about the resume. And he's already been a wide receivers coach, and he's been a recruiting coordinator. I think maybe it's worth a phone call. These are the type of guys that I'm thinking, like, yeah, that just makes sense. It checks a lot of boxes, and you would think that carries a lot of weight in our recruiting hotbed. We're going up against teams that are also heavily recruiting the Sun Belt footprint, and you bring in a guy that a lot of them are going to know. Like,
Mhm.
let's be fair. There's a lot of App State fans that are big UNC fans. Let's just be fair, right? Just like there are a lot of Herd fans that are West Virginia fans. And a guy like that comes in and goes, "Hey, they got Switz over there. That carries a little bit of clout with me here." Anyway, just the two unique names, and wanted to get your reaction to that
Well, we've listed four names here in highly
from me.
speculation. Yeah, but four people here that we've listed, and I can almost guarantee you it will be none of those four
None of those.
because because we don't know. We're not we don't have Tony on speed
No, but I've
dial.
got a wish list too. I've got a speculation list too.
And that's what this show's all about, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we can speculate when we want to, and we tell everybody it's highly speculative. But that is something that herd fans really need to understand is like when you start talking about quarterbacks that are going to be brought in, or you start talking about coaches that might be brought in, these coaches know so much more than we ever will, and they have so many more connections. And most of the time, we just listed 4 people, and all 4 have a tie here to Marshall.
Correct.
But I mean, they could bring somebody in that they've known and talked to for 20 years that might be a legend that I don't even know what their name is.
Correct.
And that's why we need to just wait and listen. And it's fun to speculate as we do it. But whoever comes in, I'm sure they're going to know who would be the best fit for this offense that they're trying to put in.
Yeah.
The reason that I went with Brewer first is if he's already on staff, he's obviously going to know what offense they're doing. He's going to have a head start on it.
Yeah. Let me go down that street real quick, and then I'm I'm about ready to close this one out. Let's say that they do that. Let's just say that Gunther Brewer moves over from tight ends to wide receivers. Now we got to hire a tight end coach. Well, I'd like to go down to Boone, North Carolina, and steal their newly hired tight end coach, one Ryan Urachek, and bring him back home to Huntington.
Yeah, well, that was my first thought when we were talking about who would you then put as tight ends coach. Well, he's right there.
Yeah, he's right there, and it would be a little fun, honestly. He was down there at Arkansas for a number of years. As the AD down there at Arkansas, and that's where he got his coaching start. And now he's branched out and tight end coach, and I like that. I mean, Ryan was awesome. The football guy, you used that term earlier. Ryan Urachek was the definition of football guy, Yeah. And we didn't even talk about him when we were talking about, mismatch tight ends. Yeah. And because he was a little bit more of a traditional-ish tight end. He wasn't the 6'5" guy, but he was not somebody I would line up out wide. But boy, was he productive as hell. And that would be a great one to bring back. That bring back Jackson White as your special teams coordinator. A lot of folks. He was a reserve quarterback here, but he was the holder for I want to say like the 2016, 17, 18, 19, something like that. Yeah. I definitely know in 2019 when the special teams, the kicking trio was Jackson White, Matt Beardall, and Rowasser. The great kicking trio. So you got Ralph on staff, you got Shannon on staff, you got Jackson White on staff. You might as well, if you're going to move Gunther over, you might as well go get Ryan Urachek and, just grow the family. And if you don't, then maybe call Tommy and grow the family anyway.
Before we close out, let's just go over just listing. Here's the coaching staff for anyone that is not familiar with it. And cool. Head coach Tony Gibson, offensive coordinator Rod Smith from down at Jacksonville State, and has followed Rich Rodriguez since his playing days. Rod McDowell is the running backs coach. He has been under Rod Smith 1 year, maybe 2 years, but he comes from Jacksonville State as well. Wide receiver is now open. Tight ends, Gunther Brewer. Offensive line, Bob McLean. We speculated about that last time you and I recorded, but he has known Rod Smith for a long time. This will be the 4th or 5th time that they have been on the same coaching staff. Defensive side of the ball, defensive coordinator Shannon Morrison. He also will be coaching the safeties. We talked about that earlier. Defensive line coach Ralph Street. We talked about that earlier. Linebacker coach Jake Ellsworth. Cornerbacks coach Jared Hawley. Strength and conditioning Dwight Galt. He comes over from Virginia Tech, where he was director of football strength and conditioning. His father has been a well-known, well-traveled strength and conditioning coach for several decades. So nice little pedigree that we put here together. And I didn't say special teams with Jackson White, but you already mentioned that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there you go. All these guys are on X, and you can follow the whole coaching staff if you want to seek them all out. And I suggest that you do, because support the guys that are here, by golly. Anyway, Russ, I got nothing else. If you want to take us out of here, let's do it.
Yeah, you will see Jed and I with our 5 things and around the herd here pretty soon, and then you'll see KD and I coming back real soon after that. But other than that, whether you see us at the Joan, whether you see us at the Jack, or whether you see us at the Cam, no matter where you see us, when we say go herd.
Go herd, it's the ThunderCast. We'll see you sometime next week. Later.